I'm going to frame this painting on canvas in this wood maple frame. So this is a floater frame from Ampersand, and this box contains everything that you need to frame this picture. So I'll just open this up. There's a set of instructions, the hanging hardware, and there's the spacers, which I'll explain later. So the first step is I attach the screw eyes, which are for the picture hanging wire. If you read the instructions, they do that last, but I like to do it before the canvas is in the frame because it's easier to get the drill in there. You want to attach the screw eyes about a third of the way down from the top of the frame. My painting is 16 inches, but if you measure this frame, it's actually 17. So 17 divided by 3 is like 5.667. I'll just round that up to 5.75 just to make it easier to measure. What I normally do is I just mark it on the back side here, and then I extend the mark over to the inside edge. Just double check my measurements so I don't have to do this twice. Now these wood frames are hardwood. This is maple and it's solid wood. You can see it's got a nice subtle grain. A lot of the cheaper brands will use like a composite wood and then they paint it white or black. I don't think this is strong and it doesn't look as good as like hardwood that has a nice subtle grain to it. So this is what I was talking about. If you had a canvas in here, it would be hard to get this bulky drill in here and get it perpendicular to the frame. So I do this step first. And make sure you wear safety glasses too when you drill. The drill bit they recommend is 3/32 of an inch. You can also use like a manual hand drill to drill these holes, and that's especially helpful if you have a real small frame and this drill would be too big to get in there. Sometimes with like a small frame, you have to go at an angle when you use a drill this big. So I'll link to a manual hand drill in the description. So I got this side drilled and I'll just flip it over and do the other side. It also makes sense to insert the screw eyes now while the canvas isn't in there. I do that by hand, but if it gets too tight, I put a small screwdriver in there to get more leverage. I'll go ahead and clean up my work table, and then I'll put down a blanket to protect my artwork. This frame is designed for wood panels that are 7/8 of an inch thick, but you can use it for 3/4 inch canvases, which is what I have. If you look at this, it says 3/4 of an inch. That's the thickness of my canvas. The way that you can make that fit is they have these spacers and you can attach it to the back of the canvas. And these other spacers are for if you want to use a flat wood panel. I can show you what that looks like. Here's like an 1/8 inch canvas panel, and if you wanted to frame it in a floater frame like this, you would attach these to the back of it. If you look at this, it's not equal on all sides, so one side's taller than the other. So you have to make sure you get the right side facing up. Those spacers will lift your canvas panel up so that it's almost flush with the frame. You want it to be recessed a little bit so that the frame protects the artwork. I demonstrate how to attach these spacers to a gesso board in much more detail in a separate video. In that video, I used silicone as an adhesive. The rest of the process is pretty much the same. The point is that these spacers make floater frames much more versatile. You can use them to frame gesso boards, canvas panels, cradled wood panels, and stretched canvas. I won't be needing these spacers, so I'll put them aside. These are attached to the back of the canvas in the centers. And one thing I noticed is that when I put these in here and place the canvas in here, it wobbles a little bit. I think that's because my canvas is either uneven on the back because of the staples or the way that this is folded up in the corners, or maybe even the stretcher bars are warped a little bit, which is a possibility. You can kind of see there's a little curve to that. So one way to solve that problem is I have extra spacers from another kit that I didn't need the spacers for. So I'll put them more like this on the back of the canvas. And then when I put that in there, it seems much more solid. If you don't have extra spacers like I did, you can either make your own shims or cut down some mat board and just place it in there so that it's nice and steady. The instructions recommend using wood glue or double-sided foam tape. I think that would work okay on a wood panel that's cradled, but on this canvas, I think I'm going to use hot glue because it's reversible and it doesn't leave that much residue on the back. So I just put a small dab of hot glue on each spacer and you let it cool off, and it seems to stick pretty well. And I'll see if that fits better in the frame. I've got the spacers on the back of my canvas, and then I have this frame set up so that the screw eyes are at the top. You just drop your canvas in there. You want to align the canvas so that there's even spacing around the whole outside. So take your time to get that right. Once you get it the way you like it, what you can do is you can rip up some of the leftover cardboard from the packaging and you can wedge it in along the side so that when you turn this over, the painting will stay where it's at. Once you're happy with the way that it's spaced, you want to carefully flip it over. These are fast screws. You don't need to drill any pilot holes before you screw them in. So I like to do this by hand so I don't overdo it. I mean, you can use a drill, but it's real easy to drill them in a little too far. It doesn't take long for them to get started. You really don't need to like over tighten this. You're just trying to hold a canvas within the frame. The other thing is like once you get 2 of them in there, it's pretty secure in the frame. So let's turn that over, make sure it's still aligned. Looks pretty good. I'll insert the screws for the top and bottom too. So the best way to set up these shims is so that they're directly underneath the screw. So when you tighten it up, it doesn't put too much pressure on the stretcher bars and pull it towards the frame. So when I put them over here to compensate for the way that it wobbled, I think it might help if I unscrew these and just put another shim directly underneath this hole. All right, so I took that screw out and I'll just put these underneath and then just put the screw back in. I'll add another spacer under the screw along the top edge too. The last step is to attach the picture hanging wire. I have an entire video about how to tie picture hanging wire. The link is in the description and I have a card up at the top right corner of the screen. In that video, I explain why you should use picture hanging hardware instead of just a nail. The hardware is available in different sizes so that it can hold up to 50 pounds or more. I even weigh a painting just to show that most small paintings don't weigh that much. The video also includes other picture hanging tips such as how to mark the wall so that the painting will end up at the height that you wanted. You need at least 3 inches of extra wire so you can easily tie it. This kit came with approximately 53 inches of wire, and that's for the 16 by 20 frame. So there's plenty of wire to work with. It helps if you have wire cutters. I think cutting wire with scissors would damage the blades. These are vice grips and they have wire cutters inside of the jaw. I like to use these small pliers to bunch the wire up closer to the screw eyes and to tighten the knot a little bit. You want to leave a little bit of slack in the wire. Otherwise, it can be difficult to get the wire to hang on the picture hanging hardware. The final step is to put these rubber bumpers on the bottom corners. Just peel them off and press them on. The bumpers protect the wall and it keeps the painting from sliding around too much. Another benefit is that it creates a gap between the wall and the painting so the air can circulate behind it. So you turn it over and then you can remove this cardboard. There it is, a framed painting that looks professional and it doesn't require any woodworking skills. It's even easier if you use a cradle gesso board because you can skip the step where you add the spacers. Up next you can watch me paint this steamboat painting or watch my other picture framing videos.